Tel Aviv, the region called Dan, because of the tribe of Dan. Nearby, Tel Kasile, where the Philistines dwelt. They couldn't get along, so the Israelites moved up north. But in 1909, the Jewish people came back to resettle the city of Dan, or Tel Aviv. Tel Kasile, with its Philistine temple and houses, is on the grounds of the Eretz Israel Museum, Tel Aviv's top museum of archaeology with exhibits on history, arts, glass, ethnography, and ceramics. However, today I'm drawn to the Eretz Israel Museum to see a special exhibit of items from Tel Rehov, dating to the early days of the Israelite monarchy.
On exhibit are the remains, or mostly the remains, of the 10th and 9th centuries BCE, which in terms of the biblical narrative are the days of the United Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom of Israel.
Here, a unique apiary or beehives were discovered, and the so-called House of Elisha, a possible biblical period school of the prophets dated to the late 9th century BC. After that discovery, I was personally involved in helping protect the site from the bee-eater birds, which burrowed in the mud brick walls for nesting purposes. We covered the ancient plastered walls with chicken wire to keep the birds out. Elijah's house at Tel Rehov, 3 kilometers from the Jordan River, south of Beit Shan, yielded cultic altars, cookingware, and bowls that could have fed a group of people, perhaps the 50-member Sons of the Prophets. One room, probably a bedroom, produced a clay plaque, or ostrakhan, with the actual name Elisha, dated to the late 9th century BC. That is the very time of Elisha himself. Professor Mazar, we're here at a great exhibition concerning the connection of a find of the House of Elisha, and also it's known as Devash Melachim, the honey of the kings. Where did that name come from?
Well, the name is just the name of the exhibition, and I always say it's not Dvash Melachim, which would be translated into king's honey, but rather I would put a comma. Honey, comma, kings, because we are dealing here with honey, with apiary, with bee keeping, the only place in the world where an apiary was discovered in archaeology, and also with kings, because you know this place was important in the period of the monarchy, of the Israelite monarchy, and I believe that one of the kings of Israel, important king, the founder of the new dynasty, Jehu, came from this city, because we found the name of his family, Nimshi, twice in 2 inscriptions, and the 3rd time in a nearby site, one of the small villages near Rehov. So I think that this family, Nimshi, lived in this city. The center of this family was in this city, and probably Jehu, the king, the new king, came out from this town. We cannot prove it, but it's an assumption.
When did you first discover the site, and what led you to this area particularly?
Well, I excavated in the Bet Shean Valley since 1989. I excavated for 9 years the mound of Bet Shean, you know, very famous.
Which we all know and love so much.
Everybody knows it and so on. But during this excavation, I conducted some surveys in the valley, and I studied the other sites in the valley. And I realized that this site, called in Arabic Tel Esarem, or Tel Rehov, is known since the beginning of the 20th century, was identified, was described, but was never excavated. And in the surveys, we realized that it is more than twice in large than Bet Shean, that it is indeed the largest mound in the valley of Bet Shean and one of the largest mounds in Israel. It's a 10 hectares site, which is, say, like Megiddo, one of the major mounds in the Iron Age in Israel. So we decided in 1996 to end our excavations at Bet Shean. We accomplished our task there, and we started this new excavation, which lasted for 12 years.
Incredible. So what you're saying is this mound actually has much more to be uncovered in future years if...
No question. When you have a site like this, with about 20 meters accumulation of human debris from many periods, 10 hectares in area. You cannot excavate all of it, of course. What we excavated, even in the last period, the main period that we excavated, the 10th and 9th centuries BC, we excavated less than 2% of the area of the site. And when we go to earlier periods, like the Bronze Age, we excavated less than 0.5% or 0.1% of the area of the site. So we left a lot for future archaeologists to excavate in this place.
I want to come back to something you said, because there was a discovery of these beehives. Mm-hmm. And as I understood it, this is the only discovery of such an intact beehive as it was then?
Yeah. You know, in Britain, very famous is Eva Crane. She was the founder of modern research of beekeeping. She wrote the basic book on this, and she passed away just a year after we discovered these beehives. In 2005, we discovered the first beehives, and in 2007, we uncovered the entire apiary with more than 30 hives. These are the charred honeycombs. And in those honeycombs, we found remains of bees, actual bees.
Wow.
Which were photographed. You see the photographs here. These were done in electron microscope. And you can see parts of the bees, the wings, the muscles, the eyes, etc.
That's amazing.
And we were able to identify, scholars identified what kind, subspecies of bee we are dealing with. And they discovered this is a bee which is not local to Israel. It is the Anatolian bee. It came from Turkey. So it's very unusual and very interesting question.
Something that possibly was brought, or actually...
We think that they brought the swarms, you know. But, you know, it's a big problem how they did it and so on, because it's about 500-600 kilometers away. That's a very interesting question.
Now, this is just a
depiction,
modern, right?
Of course.
Okay.
This is a modern.
And then this would have been the seal on the jar itself.
Yes, but this is modern also. This beehives is not from our excavation.
Ah, okay.
Because our excavations, beehives are falling apart. They are made from unfired clay. This is fired clay, and this is coming from some Arab village. This is from our excavation. You see the one wall of the hive with a small flying hole. The British call it flying hole. It means the place where the bees would fly out of the beehives. And this is a fragment of the lid with a handle on the other side. You see on this side, you put the lid and you open it when you want to extract the honey, once a year or twice a year. In archaeology, we know beekeeping mainly from Egyptian wall paintings and wall reliefs from the 3rd millennium and 2nd millennium and 1st millennium BC. We know it from several texts from Egypt, from the Hittite Empire, from Mesopotamia, but no one excavated an apiary. Even in the Roman, Hellenistic and Roman, Greek, Hellenistic and Roman world, we know about hives, pottery vessels that were used as hives, but no apiary was found as this one, industrial in nature, well planned, well organized. So this is an exciting discovery.
So did the beehives come first, or the house, or at the same time?
What do you mean?
The house in terms of where the plaque of Elisha...
No, the Elisha plaque was found one level later than the level of the beehives. You know, when we excavate from top to bottom, we count the numbers of strata, cities that were destroyed and rebuilt. So the beehives are in stratum 5 and the Elisha building is in stratum 4. There is a difference of about, I would say, about half a century between them. We don't know exactly, but I estimate around half a century, maybe less.
Now, what did you find in the house itself, and why the connection with Elisha?
Well, the Elisha house is an interesting, outstanding building in terms of its architecture. Its plan is unique. We don't have houses like this in Israel with 2 wings. Each one of them has an opening. Each opening leads into an entrance chamber. The entrance chamber leads into a hall. In the hall, there are benches to sit on and so on. There are various installations. And then there is an entrance from both wings into back rooms, which are connected between them. That means if you want to move from one wing to the other, you have to do it through the inner room. And the inner room thus has 2 entrances. Near each one of those entrances, we found an altar, which we can see in this exhibition. altar made of pottery with 4 horns, very nicely worked. Inside this room, we found this inscription in red ink on pottery sherd, which we read Elisha. The reading is not safe, by the way. It's broken, but at least I think most epigraphists who saw it believe that our reading is correct, that it provides the name Elisha, the biblical name Elisha.
So this is the plaque
This is the
itself.
Elisha inscription. You see the red ink, and you can see Lamed, Yud, Shin, Ain, probably, Elisha. Of course, the question is whether this Elisha is the Elisha which is known from the Bible. We cannot be sure about that. We suggest it, but very, very carefully, because we really cannot say it for sure.
This here is the grain bin that was found,
Yeah,
correct?
all these finds are from the Elisha building. It's called building CP. You can see the plan of the building here on the wall. And this is, again, a unique. We don't have anything like it. It's a bin. We found it full of charred grain. You can still see the evidence for fire inside. And it was reconstructed here in the museum. We found 2 of them. So we don't have anything like it.
It's amazing.
Anywhere else, yes.
It's so intact, actually.
Yeah. And these are the two altars.
And the fire confirms the carbon data with the bees themselves, the same time period?
A little bit later. The apiary is a little bit earlier, as I said, about half a century earlier. Yeah, you can see these 2 pottery altars. We don't know what was put on top of them or fired on top of them, perhaps incense, perhaps even small animals like pigeons or whatever, perhaps just loaves of bread. But they are definitely used for offering in a ritual in this building. And they were found next to the 2 entrances to this room where we found the Elisha inscription.
So it would be very common, would it not be, that in the days of Elisha, that somebody would bring him an offering, in a sense, for being the holy man or the servant of
That's
God.
what I believe, but it's very hard to say for sure. You can use your imagination. You see on this building, and you can imagine the activities in this building freely, We don't know really to reconstruct.
But it does sound like whoever, or if Elisha and his servants certainly hosted many guests.
If we are correct.
Yes.
If we are correct, yeah.
It's just...
You can see there are many unique vessels. For example, these 2 vessels, there is no parallel for them with the leads. You see the leads? Nowhere, in no other site, such vessels were found. So we have here some very special, very unique, very unusual activity. So in terms of date, the building was destroyed in heavy conflagration, very heavy fire. And we can date this fire by sending grain, charred grain that we found in the house and adjacent houses to radiocarbon dating. And the dates that we get are in the 9th century, more or less ending around 840, 830 BC, which is more or less corresponding with the early period of Elisha activity in the kingdom of Israel. We know that he was active for about 40 years or so. He was born not far from Tel Rehov in a place called Abel Mechola, which is about 10 kilometers away south of Tel Rehov. So in terms of date, it fits. In terms of geography, it fits. And I think it fits also from another point of view. Elisha in the Bible is mentioned as the one who initiated. He sent one of his companions, Bnei HaNevi'im, the sons of the prophet, to anoint Jehu as the new king. And as I said, Jehu perhaps was born in Tel Rehov because we have the name of the family, Nimshi, here in this city. So putting all this together and taking into consideration all this cultic activity and the ceremonial activity and the evidence for feasts and a lot of dining and public dining in this particular building, the plan, the very unique design of the plan of this building. So I came to this suggestion, which may sound very hypothetical and imaginary, that perhaps this particular building served the particular Elisha who is known as, to us from the Bible in these particular years around the 1930s, 40s of the 9th century BC. But you know, we have to be very, very careful about it.
Understood, but I'm sure that many that watch this program will already be coming to their own conclusions quickly.
Yeah, though, you know, you have to, I believe that most of my colleagues will be more cynical about it. But, you know.
But that's your profession, and other people are great poets and dreamers too.
Okay.
A question I have, because you mentioned the word benches, so that almost gives me an idea that it was a place of study, like a yeshiva.
Well, I'm not sure about that, because the building is full of artifacts. It's unbelievable in this rather small building. It's not a public, it's not a monumental building, it's a rather simple building. But in this particular building, we found almost 260 pottery vessels, cooking pot, big jars, serving jars, and so on the benches. I don't think that it was a study building. I think that maybe we have to compare it to a kind of a pilgrimage area and feasting. I compare it more to the activity that we know these days, in our own days, in Israel, in a place like Netivot. You know, there is a holy man. Elisha was a holy man, after all. This is a kind of archetype of a holy man. People perhaps came to visit him, to see him, to get his blessings. And then they were dining together, etc.
I would think 260...
Yeah, but you know, it's all imagination. And we can't prove anything. What we have are the artifacts. The artifacts are interesting. They are very unusual. Beyond that, we are in the realm of interpretation.
Let me look at it from another direction. What is the basis and foundation for many people's faith, and connecting that to archaeology?
Well, archaeology is one of the few direct sources to what really happened in history. You know, the Bible, as we have it, as we got it, is a result of a very long process of writing, editing, changes, and so on. Many scholars believe that the version of the Bible that survived, that we use today, the Masoretic text, much of it was probably written maybe in the 7th century BC, the end of the monarchy. That means about 200 years later than the buildings that we excavate here. And then they were rewritten and edited and changed and so on during the 6th century, the 5th century, the 4th century. Finally, they arrived, you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls are already providing us a text which is very similar to our text, the Masoretic text, with few changes. So we have to think about the text, the biblical text, to what extent it really reflects what happens in the 10th century or 9th century or 8th century, centuries BC. That means much before it was put on writing in its present form. So archaeology is important because it gives us some evidence concerning these early periods. For example, one of the debates concerning this period was to what extent they were literary. They were really used to write and read already in common, in daily practice during this time, the 10th century, the 9th centuries BC. And here in Tel Rehov, we have about 5 jars, you can see them in the exhibition, with inscriptions on them. This is daily use of writing, of script during this period. So we may say that writing was much more popular than we thought in this particular period, though still we have only a few inscriptions from this period, from the 10th and 9th centuries BC. And this is correct with many other aspects of daily life. For example, if we take religious life, religion, how religion looked like during that period. Who were the gods that they believed in? Was the God of Israel, Yahweh, already important, yes or no? So archaeology, you know, gives us some evidence, iconographic evidence mainly. When we look on objects and we see illustrations, we see figurines of naked females everywhere. We believe that these are depictions of the Canaanite goddesses, Ashtarte, or we have depictions of tree, which we believe that they are depictions of the Canaanite goddess Asherah. All these gods and goddesses taken from the Canaanite world prior to the arrival of the Israelites were still worshipped in Israel during that time. We know it also from the Bible.
And I saw many of these figurines here, actually.
Oh, sure. We have in Tel Rehov one of the largest collections of such figurines ever found in Israel. We have about 40 figurines.
I noticed in the figurines as well, some of the mothers or women playing drums.
Yes.
And,
yes, there are about 60 figurines showing women playing a drum, at least so they are interpreted. And in Tel Rehov we have about 8 of them, so it's a large group. And they are considered to be fertility figurines, probably depicting either priestesses and so on, or real goddesses. Since they are naked, we think that they are depicting fertility goddesses. Why are they using this drum? It's hard to say. There are various explanations to this. But yes, this is one of the types of figurines that we find in the Kingdom of Israel mainly.
And I understand also one of the inscriptions found was the name Nimshi on it.
2 inscriptions with the name Nimshi. We have one jar with the name Nimshi found in the apiary, just next to the apiary, or inside the apiary, in fact, among the hives. And the second one was found in the later period, just next to the Elisha building, in another building, very rich in finds. We have this inscription mentioning belonging or le Shakai Nimshi. Shakai is probably from the root Shakya, that means a kind of maybe high official in charge of the official drinks. You know, it's a kind of a title that is known from this period. So probably he was a kind of a high official coming from this family, Nimshi. So the Nimshi family is mentioned twice in Tel Rehov. Yeah.
When a site is being considered to be preserved in any archaeological find or such as here in Israel, what are the ingredients that makes for a site being desirable to preserve, to build, and what makes this site a challenge?
Yeah. Preservation of archaeological sites it's a big challenge. When you have large stone structures, massive stone structures, mainly in Roman cities, you know, Byzantine sites, Crusader fortresses, it's not a big deal. You can conserve the stone architecture quite well. But when you are dealing with the mounds of biblical period, when there are many various phases, one on top of the other, each phase is preserved poorly, maybe less than 1 foot high, and the building construction materials were very poor, mainly mud brick and very poor plaster and so on. The foundations are either nothing or just wood, as we have in Tel Rehov, or just field stones, as we have in other sites. It's very, very difficult to preserve and conserve. In fact, in most places, the best solution is just to back cover the excavation. There are few sites in Israel which are part of the network of the National Parks and Archaeological Sites Authority who took care to preserve places like Hatzor, Dan, Megiddo. Now they are working on Lachish, Beersheba, Arad. So we have about 5 or 6 places. Some of them are, by the way, World Heritage, UNESCO World Heritage sites. So in these sites, the authorities really invest a lot of money and efforts, and those sites are protected. There are guards, there are fences, etc., etc. But places like Tel Rehov, it's much more difficult because they are not part of this network of national sites. They are not protected, they are not guarded, and the architecture is very, very loose. It's mud brick architecture, and mud brick walls are falling apart.
Of course, we can't be 100% certain whether or not these items on display at the Eretz Israel Museum are linked to the actual biblical prophet Elisha himself. However, we can say with total certainty that these items are from an Israelite house where a group came together for religious purposes, where offerings were brought, meals shared, associated with a king anointed by Elisha. All of this in the right geographic location, from the right time period, and tying it all together a plaque with the name Elisha. If not the actual Elisha, then another one just like him. Reporting from Tel Aviv, this is Barry Siegel.